Hey folks, today we're diving into a story about a man who truly understood the meaning of commitment, right up until the moment he realized his wife did not. Our protagonist, Brian, found himself in one of life's toughest positions, being the sole caregiver for his dying father-in-law. While he was changing bedpans and managing medication, his wife was off on what she called wellness retreats, supposedly finding herself. What she really found was a younger man, and what Brian found was a very specific clause in their prenup he had almost forgotten about, a clause designed for exactly this kind of betrayal. So, before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I'm doing here. Go ahead and drop your city and what time it is where you are in the comments below. It is always great to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. The soundtrack of my life had become the gentle hiss of an oxygen machine and the rhythmic electronic beep of a heart monitor. Those two sounds were my constant companions, the background music to the slow, painful fade of my father-in-law, Frank. Our guest room, once a cheerful space with a view of the garden, was now a makeshift hospice ward. It carried the sweet, cloying scent of decay mixed with antiseptic, a smell that clung to my clothes and haunted my sleep. I was a retired electrical engineer, forced into early retirement by a back injury on a job site a few years back. I used to build systems that powered cities. Now I managed a system of medications, feeding tubes, and bedpan schedules. It was a different kind of engineering, one that required patience and a strong stomach. Frank had been a good man, a solid, dependable presence in my life for 15 years. He taught me how to fix a carburetor, how to properly smoke a brisket, and how to tell when a politician was lying. Hint: their lips are moving. He was more of a father to me than my own had ever been. So when he got sick, and the doctors started using phrases like palliative care and making him comfortable, there was no question about what I would do. He would spend his last days here, in his daughter's home, surrounded by what he should have known as family. The problem was, his daughter was rarely home. My wife, Laura, was dealing with her father's illness in her own way, she said. Her way involved a series of wellness retreats, yoga weekends, and what seemed like nightly girls' nights out. She claimed she needed the space to process her grief, to de-stress so she could be strong for me. I wanted to believe her. For the first month, I did. I would describe the long, quiet nights, Frank's moments of confusion, the sheer exhaustion, and she would listen on the phone, her voice distant. "Oh, honey, that sounds so hard," she would say from a hotel room 3 states away. "You are a saint for handling all of that. I will be back on Sunday, and I will be recharged and ready to help." But when Sunday came, she would be tired from her travels. She would give her father a quick peck on the cheek, tell him he was looking better, which was a blatant lie, and then retreat to our bedroom to unwind. The help she promised never quite materialized. Instead, it was me who learned the intricacies of his medication schedule. It was me who held his hand when he cried out in the night, confused and scared. It was me who learned to change a grown man's diapers without letting the humiliation show on my face, for his sake. One evening, after a particularly difficult day where Frank had a bad fall, I called Laura. She was at a spa retreat in Arizona. "Is he okay?" she asked, her voice sounding a little too bright, a little too cheerful. "He's shaken up, but the doctor said no broken bones. It was just a scare," I told her, my voice flat with exhaustion. "Oh, good," she sighed in relief. Then, after a brief pause, she asked the question that made a small, cold knot form in my gut. So, nothing has, you know, changed, right? She was asking if her father was dead yet. Not directly, of course. Laura was a master of indirectness. But I knew what she meant. She was waiting for the ordeal to be over so she could get back to her life. My life, our life, had been on hold for 6 months. Hers, it seemed, was just on a temporary, inconvenient detour. That cold knot in my stomach stayed there. It was a familiar feeling, a ghost from a past life. I was 45 years old, and this was my second marriage. My first had ended in a spectacular flameout of deceit and financial ruin. I had been young, in love, and stupid. I had poured my life savings into a business with my first wife, only to discover she had been pouring that money into a secret life with another man. The divorce wiped me out, not just financially, but emotionally. It taught me a hard lesson about trust and the importance of protecting yourself. When I met Laura, I was cautious. She was vibrant, beautiful, and seemed to have a good heart. But the shadow of my past was long. Before I proposed, I did something my younger self would have called cynical and unromantic. I consulted a lawyer. His name was David Chen, a sharp, no-nonsense man who specialized in asset protection. Together, we drafted a prenuptial agreement. I still remember the night I brought it up with Laura. We were at our favorite Italian restaurant, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. I had the ring in my pocket, but before I could pull it out, I had to have the conversation. "Laura," I began, my hands sweating, "I love you more than I can say. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But because of what happened to me before, I think we should have a prenup." Her face fell. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of deep offense. "A prenup? Brian, are you serious? You think I am after your money?" "No, of course not," I said, trying to salvage the evening. "It is not about you. It is about me. It is a scar I carry. This is just a piece of paper that helps the scar feel less real. It protects us both." She did not buy it. She accused me of not trusting her, of planning for failure before we even began. We argued for an hour right there at the table. I thought for sure it was over. But in the end, after I laid out the sheer scale of my previous betrayal, she reluctantly agreed. "Fine," she said, her voice cold. "If it makes you feel secure, fine. But it is the most unromantic thing I have ever heard." We signed it a week later. I barely glanced at the clauses, trusting David to have done his job. But I did remember one he had pointed out specifically. He had a dark sense of humor. "I call this the dishwasher clause," David had said with a smirk. "It is for situations where one partner is doing all the dirty work, all the heavy lifting, like caring for a sick parent or a child, while the other partner decides to get their dishes washed somewhere else." The official name was the Dishonesty and Dignity Clause. It stipulated that if one party engaged in infidelity during a period of significant family crisis, specifically the terminal illness or mourning period of a parent or child, they would forfeit any and all claims to shared major assets, most notably the primary residence. At the time, it felt like an absurdly specific and dramatic scenario. It felt like something out of a movie. I never imagined it would become the fine print of my own life. The discovery happened on a Tuesday night. It was almost 2 in the morning. Frank was finally asleep, his breathing shallow, but steady. I was at the kitchen table, paying bills online. It was a mindless, mundane task that helped me switch off the caregiving part of my brain. I was going through the joint credit card statement, clicking through the charges. A charge from a florist in Laura's hometown. A charge from a restaurant near the yoga retreat she had attended. And then I saw it. A charge for $500 to a place called Peak Form Fitness. I frowned. Laura worked out at a local gym, a national chain that cost $50 a month. Peak Form Fitness was a high-end, boutique personal training studio on the other side of town, the kind of place where sessions cost a fortune. I had no memory of her ever mentioning it. On a whim, I typed the name into a search engine. The website popped up, featuring glossy photos of ridiculously fit people. Under the Our Trainers section, one face stood out. A young guy, maybe 30, with a chiseled jaw, tattoos snaking up his neck, and a smug grin. His name was Julian. Curiosity, that cold, ugly feeling, got the better of me. I searched for his name on social media. His profile was public. It was a monument to narcissism. Gym selfies, photos of expensive meals, and shots of him on various vacations. I scrolled back, my heart starting to pound, a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I went back 3 weeks, to the weekend Laura had spent at the Sacred Silence Wellness Retreat. And there it was. A photo of Julian, sitting on a sun-drenched balcony overlooking the ocean. He was shirtless, wearing aviator sunglasses, and holding a glass of champagne. The caption read, "Another tough day at the office. #blessed-wellness." It was a generic, arrogant post, the kind you scroll past without a thought. But I did not scroll past. I zoomed in. I zoomed in on the reflection in his sunglasses, and my world stopped. It was her. It was Laura. You could see her clearly, sitting across from him at a small table, her head tilted back in laughter, a champagne glass in her hand. Her face was full of a joy and abandon I had not seen in years. It was a face she never showed me anymore. It was the face of a woman without a care in the world, a woman whose father was not dying, a slow, painful death 2,000 miles away. A woman whose husband was not drowning in grief and exhaustion. I stared at the screen, the cheerful beep of Frank's heart monitor from the other room suddenly sounding like a ticking bomb. The air was thick and heavy. I could not breathe. It was not just the cheating. It was the sheer, profound disrespect. The deception was an elaborate stage, built on the foundation of her own father's tragedy. She was using his death as her alibi. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking in the silent house. A wave of something cold and clear washed over me, extinguishing the initial fire of rage. It was the engineer in me taking over, the part of me that did not panic, but analyzed the problem, identified the system failure, and began to formulate a plan. The betrayal was absolute. The evidence was right there, reflected in a pair of cheap sunglasses. My marriage was a lie. My wife had made her choice, laughing on a sunlit balcony while her father's world went dark. Now, I had to make mine. I did not move from the kitchen table for what felt like an hour. The image of Laura's laughing face, captured in the reflection of her lover's sunglasses, was burned onto the back of my eyelids. Every time the oxygen machine hissed, it sounded like her mocking laughter. Every beep from the heart monitor was a countdown. The initial shock, that breathtaking punch to the gut, slowly receded. It was replaced by a familiar, unwelcome cold. It was the same cold I had felt 15 years ago when I discovered my first wife had emptied our business accounts. It was the feeling of a system failure, a critical breach. And just like then, the emotional part of my brain went quiet, and the engineer took over. Panic is useless. Rage is a luxury. Data is everything. The next morning, I went about my routine as if nothing had changed. I checked on Frank, administered his morning medications, and helped him with his breakfast. Laura called around 10. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Hey, honey, just checking in. How is Dad?" "The same," I said, my voice even. "No changes." "And how are you? Are you getting enough rest?" she asked, the concern in her voice as fake as a $3 bill. "I am fine, Laura. Just keeping things steady here. You are my rock, Brian. I do not know what I would do without you," she said. I now understood that this was not a compliment. It was a statement of fact. She literally did not know what she would do without me holding down the fort while she lived her second life. After the call, I went to my office. I did not look up the trainer again. I did not need to see his smug face. Instead, I found the number for David Chen, my lawyer. I called him. "David Chen speaking." His voice was exactly as I remembered it, crisp and impatient, the voice of a man who bills in 6-minute increments. "David, it is Brian Keller. We worked together on a prenuptial agreement about 15 years ago." There was a brief pause. "Keller, of course, the engineer. Let me guess. You are not calling to tell me how happy you are." "You could say that," I said dryly. "I need to talk to you about a specific clause. You had a nickname for it. You called it the dishwasher clause." I heard the sound of typing, then a low chuckle on the other end of the line. "Ah, yes. The dishonesty and dignity clause. My favorite. Do not tell me your wife was foolish enough to trigger it." "I believe so. I have definitive proof of infidelity." "Is the other condition met?" David asked, his voice suddenly sharp, all business. "The family crisis part. Is there a terminally ill parent or child in the picture? My father-in-law, her father, is in hospice care. In my home. I am his sole caregiver," I said. The line went silent for a moment. Then David said, "Brian, listen to me very carefully. Do not confront her. Do not let her know that you know. Do not change your behavior in any way. Right now, you have the moral high ground and a powerful legal tool. But it is only as good as the evidence we can present. A screenshot from social media is a good start, but we need more. We need irrefutable, time-stamped, professionally gathered proof of a continued pattern of behavior. We need to show that this was not a one-time mistake, but a calculated deception during this specific period of crisis." "What do you suggest?" I asked. "I suggest you hire a professional. I have a firm I work with. They are discreet, they are thorough, and their evidence holds up in court. I will send you their contact information. Call them, pay their retainer, let them build the case. In the meantime, you are a loving, supportive, and completely oblivious husband. Can you do that?" "Yes," I said, the word coming out colder than I expected. "I can do that." Hiring a private investigator was one of the strangest things I have ever done. It felt sleazy, like something out of a cheap detective novel. But David was right. My feelings did not matter. The data did. I met with a man named Mr. Morales, a former police detective with tired eyes and a firm handshake. I gave him Julian's name, Laura's schedule of retreats, and a copy of her photograph. I wrote him a check that made my hand ache. And then I went home and continued playing the role of the devoted husband. The emails from Morales started arriving 2 days later. They were always sent after midnight, always with a subject line that read, "Project Update." They were clinical, detached, and utterly devastating. The first report contained photos of Laura and Julian leaving a fancy restaurant, her arm linked through his. The second had them checking into a boutique hotel for the weekend. The same weekend, she was supposedly at a grief counseling seminar. There were receipts for expensive jewelry, not for me. There were photos of them kissing in a public park, her face alight with a kind of giddy happiness I had long forgotten. Each night, I would wait for Frank to fall into a fitful sleep. Then I would go to my office, open the latest email from Morales, and feel another piece of my 15-year marriage crumble into dust. I did not get angry. I got organized. I bought a 3-ring binder and a box of plastic sheet protectors. I printed every photograph, every report, every credit card statement showing her expenditures on him. I created a timeline, cross-referencing her lies with the PI's facts. The binder grew thicker each week, a heavy, tangible catalog of her betrayal. I started to think of it as my project. While she was building a new life based on lies, I was building a case based on truth. In early autumn, Frank's condition took a sharp turn for the worse. The doctor told me it was time. The end would be a matter of days, not weeks. I called Laura, who was on a business trip in Chicago. "You need to come home," I said. "It is time." She arrived the next day, her face a mask of sorrow that seemed expertly applied. She sat by her father's bed, held his hand for the cameras that were not there, and spoke to him in hushed, loving tones. But when she was out of the room, she was on her phone, texting furiously. I knew who she was texting. The PI's report from the day before had shown Julian boarding a flight to Chicago. They had turned her business trip into a romantic getaway. Frank passed away 2 days later. He went peacefully in his sleep. I was holding his hand. Laura was in the living room, on the phone with her best friend, complaining about the hospital smell. When I told her he was gone, she produced a flood of tears that seemed to come from nowhere. She threw herself into my arms, sobbing about how much she loved him, how she could not believe he was gone. I held her, but I felt nothing. It was like holding a stranger. The funeral planning was a masterclass in her selfishness. She insisted on the most expensive casket, the largest floral arrangements, the fanciest reception. "We have to give him the send-off he deserves," she declared. "Money is no object when it comes to honoring my father." But when the bill from the funeral home arrived, she slid it across the table to me. "Can you handle this, honey?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "My head is just a mess. I cannot even think about numbers right now." I looked at the total. It was nearly $20,000. I paid it from my personal retirement account, the money I had set aside from my injury settlement. I transferred the funds and printed the receipt. It went into the binder, right behind a photo of her and Julian laughing over cocktails, taken the night before the funeral. All right, folks, I have to jump in here. Imagine being in Brian's shoes. You have just buried your father-in-law, a man you respected, and your wife is using her mourning as an excuse to continue her affair, leaving you with the bill. At this point, would you have confronted her, or would you stick to the plan and let the lawyers handle it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It is a tough call. The weeks after the funeral were the worst. Laura milked her grief for all it was worth. It became her all-purpose excuse. She needed girls' nights to talk about her feelings. She needed weekend getaways to clear her head. I knew from the steady stream of updates from Morales that these were all lies. Her grief counseling sessions were dinners with Julian. Her trips to clear her head were weekends at his apartment. She was mourning her father in the arms of the man she was cheating on me with. The dishonesty and dignity clause was not just a legal technicality anymore. For me, it had become a moral imperative. She was not just disrespecting me. She was dishonoring the memory of her own father. I let her go. I did not question her. When she said she was going out with friends, I just nodded and said, "Be safe." I would watch her get ready, putting on a new dress, doing her makeup, a little too excited for a woman supposedly crippled by sorrow. She would look at my own quiet, somber demeanor and mistake it for shared grief. She saw a broken man. She had no idea she was looking at a man who was meticulously building a legal cage, bar by bar, right around her. Finally, about a month after the funeral, the last report from Morales came in. It was a summary of his findings, a neat, bulleted list of her lies. The job was done. I sent him a final payment along with a generous bonus. I spent that evening organizing the binder one last time. It was now 3 inches thick, heavy with the weight of her deceit. Photos, receipts, hotel folios, bank statements, timelines. It was perfect. A complete and undeniable record of her betrayal, all of it falling squarely within the legal definition of the crisis period outlined in our prenup. I closed the binder and placed it on my desk. The house was quiet. Laura was out, at another grief dinner. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. For the first time in months, I did not feel that cold knot of dread in my stomach. The grief for my marriage had burned itself out, leaving behind something hard and clear, like tempered steel. All the pain, all the humiliation, all the quiet suffering had been distilled down into this one single purpose. The investigation was over. The evidence was irrefutable. All that was left was the execution, and I would be the one to swing the axe. Laura came home just before 11. She swept into the house with a gust of cold autumn air, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. She was humming a little tune. She dropped her keys into the ceramic bowl by the door and kicked off her heels with a sigh of contentment. "What a night," she said, walking toward the kitchen. Janice was an absolute mess, telling the same stories about Dad over and over. It is so draining, but you have to be there for your friends, you know? I did not answer. I just sat at the head of the dining room table, my hands resting on either side of the thick 3-ring binder. The dining room was dark, except for a single overhead light that cast a sterile, white circle on the polished wood. It felt less like a dining room and more like an interrogation room. She stopped when she saw me. Her smile faltered. "Brian, what are you doing sitting in the dark? You look so serious. Is everything okay?" "No, Laura," I said, my voice calm and even. "Nothing is okay. Please sit down." A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. My somber mood was killing her buzz. "Brian, I am really tired. Can this wait until morning?" "It has waited long enough," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. I nudged the binder into the center of the pool of light. "We need to talk about this." She approached the table cautiously, as if the binder were a venomous snake. She sat down opposite me and tentatively pulled it toward her. She opened the cover. The first page was a high-resolution, glossy photograph of her and Julian, clinking champagne glasses on the hotel balcony in Arizona. Her breath hitched. "What is this?" she whispered, her face draining of all color. "Keep going," I said. She flipped the page. A photo of them holding hands, walking into a restaurant. Flip. A close-up of a jewelry store receipt for a man's watch. Flip. A date-stamped image of them kissing outside an apartment building that was not ours. She flipped faster and faster, her hands starting to tremble. Photos, bank statements, hotel folios. Her secret life, laid out in chronological order. When she reached the end, she slammed the binder shut. Her head snapped up, and her eyes, which were filled with fear just a moment ago, now blazed with fury. "You spied on me," she hissed. "You had me followed. This is sick, Brian. This is an insane violation of my privacy." "Was it a violation of my trust when you were sleeping with him?" I asked, my voice remaining level. "Was it a violation of your father's memory when you were with him the night before the funeral?" She recoiled as if I had slapped her. She tried to pivot. It was a mistake. I was grieving. I was lost. And you were so distant, so wrapped up in everything with Dad. I was lonely. "I was distant?" I repeated, a humorless laugh escaping my lips for the first time. "I was in this house, Laura. I was cleaning up after your sick father. I was managing his medication. I was holding his hand while he died. Where were you?" "This is not fair," she cried, tears of rage and self-pity now streaming down her face. "You are twisting things. Marriages go through rough patches. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. But this binder, this is unforgivable." "I agree," I said. "It is unforgivable." I reached beside me and picked up a much thinner folder. I slid it across the table. "This is a copy of our prenuptial agreement." She scoffed. "Oh, here we go, the famous prenup. Fine, I will get a lawyer, a good one. I will get half of everything, Brian. This house is half mine. You cannot bully me." "I am not going to bully you," I said softly. "I am just going to read to you." I opened my own copy of the agreement, the page already marked. I leaned forward into the light. Section 7. The Dishonesty and Dignity Clause. It states, and I quote, "In the event that one party engages in a sustained pattern of marital infidelity, confirmed by documented evidence, during a period of significant family crisis, a period defined as, but not limited to, the active hospice care or subsequent 12-week mourning period following the death of a parent, child, or sibling of either party, the unfaithful party thereby forfeits any and all legal and financial claim to the primary marital residence and any shared assets exceeding a value of $10,000 acquired during the marriage." I looked up at her. Her face was a mask of confusion and horror. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I continued, my voice clear and steady. "Your affair, as documented in that binder, began approximately 4 months ago while your father was in my care. It continued, uninterrupted, through his death and into the mourning period, which has not yet concluded. You triggered the clause, Laura. The home you are sitting in is no longer half yours. According to the document you signed 15 years ago, it is entirely mine. My lawyer filed for divorce this afternoon on these grounds. It is over." The fight drained out of her completely. The rage, the tears, the indignant denials, all of it evaporated, leaving behind a hollow, defeated woman. She stared at me, her expression one of utter disbelief. as if I had just explained a complex physics equation that proved her world was flat. She had been so sure of her position, so certain of the rules. She never bothered to read the fine print. The divorce was as swift and brutal as it was inevitable. Her high-priced lawyer took one look at my binder and advised her to settle immediately. The dishonesty and dignity clause was ironclad. She left with her clothes, her car, and a check for $10,000, as stipulated. She was also held liable for her share of the credit card debt she had accumulated, forcing her to sell the car to pay for her affair's lavish expenses. The last I heard, she had moved in with Julian. I doubted that would last long without my money to fund their lifestyle. For a few weeks, I lived alone in the large, silent house. I had won. I had protected my assets, defended my dignity, and delivered a swift, decisive dose of justice. But the victory felt hollow. The house was no longer a home. It was a monument to a lie, a prize I had won in a competition I never wanted to enter. Every room held a memory, and most of them were now tainted. A month after the divorce was finalized, I called my mother-in-law, Frank's widow, a quiet, gentle woman who had been steamrolled by her daughter's selfishness her entire life. She had been grieving her husband alone, while her daughter grieved in hotel rooms with another man. We met for coffee at a small cafe downtown. After some polite conversation, I slid a large envelope across the table to her. "I want you to have this," I said. She opened it and pulled out the deed to the house. Her eyes widened. "Brian, I cannot accept this. This is your home." "No, it is not," I said, shaking my head. "It never really was. Frank loved that house. He and I built that deck together. He planted those rose bushes by the fence. He would want you to be there, to be secure. Think of it as one last gift from him, not from me." Tears welled in her eyes. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You are a good man, Brian Keller. My husband knew that." That was all the thanks I needed. I walked out of that cafe and did not look back. I sold my remaining furniture, packed a few boxes of personal belongings, and moved into a small, modern apartment downtown. I started hiking again, my back feeling stronger than it had in years. I started tinkering with old radios, a hobby I had loved as a kid. I started living a life that was quiet, simple, and entirely my own. The dishwasher clause, as David had called it, had done its job. It was not a weapon of revenge, not really. It was a shield of dignity. It was a fail-safe I had put in place years ago, a testament to a hard lesson learned. It ensured that at the end of it all, when the dust settled, the person who had done the dirty work would not be the one left holding nothing but dirt. I felt at peace. The anger was gone. The hurt had faded. I was just Brian again, the engineer, the man who understood that a strong foundation is everything. And now I was finally ready to build something new. And that is where Brian's story ends. A powerful lesson in foresight, dignity, and the cold, hard reality that sometimes the most important battles are won not with loud confrontations, but with quiet preparation and the reading of the fine print. It is a reminder that protecting yourself is not unromantic. It is an act of self-respect. Thank you so much for joining me for this story today. I truly appreciate you spending your time here. If you have made it this far, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. It tells YouTube that you enjoy this content and helps the channel grow. Drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of Brian's final decision. I read every one. Until next time, stay safe, and I will see you in the next one.